Howdy hey YouTube, it's Star, and it is time for another Artist Alley vlog. I've got kind of a backlog of these, and so I'm trying to bust my way through all of them. Today's episode is my vlog about Holiday Matsuri 2022. Is it technically a vlog if I don't film the entire thing? I only filmed like a couple of things this entire weekend, and I'll be scattering those throughout the video. Does it still count as a vlog? I don't know. It's more of a review. It's more just me talking about the con after the fact. I don't know if that counts as a vlog. Whatever. So before we dive too deep into talking about the con, I want to take a brief second to talk about the art I've got going in the background during this video. A few months ago, I made a set of HoloLive EN merch, and the footage in the back is from the set of my Council Girls, which were actually some of my best sellers at Holiday Matsuri. I have these in my store as both holographic keychains and stickers, and the link for that will be down in the description. So if you're feeling like you want to grab some of those for yourself, go get yourself some girlies. So anyway, let's talk about HolMat. So in case you're not aware, Holiday Matsuri is a yearly anime convention that happens in Orlando, Florida, usually right before Christmas. I'd always heard very good things about this con. And I also have friends who live close enough to Orlando that they could consider making the drive, and then we could go together and they could hang out with me while I was at my table and all that stuff. So it was always a con that I'd kind of wanted to try, but I didn't actually attempt it until 2021, not last year when this video is coming out, but last year when this convention took place. So I tried to apply for it in 2021, but there was kind of a skerfuffle that happened. They made a lot of the tables that weren't rollover tables post-COVID. They made them a first-come, first-serve with an application form on their website that would open automatically once it hit a certain time. But the app form only ended up working for people in the EST time zone, and those tables were gone in seconds, and this pissed a lot of people off. So, as an apology, the con staff gave people who weren't able to get tables two options for 2021. You get put into a lottery with a very limited amount of space remaining, or you can get a guaranteed table for 2022. I ended up picking the latter option because I wasn't local, and I was applying for it at like the end of October. I remember I was applying for this con under the kotatsu at my friend's house while I was there exhibiting for Anime Weekend Atlanta, which was like less than 2 months before the convention. And I am from Texas, and it stressed me out trying to figure out how I would do an out-of-state convention with only a month and a half to plan. So I ended up saying, just give me the guaranteed table for 2022 and I will put it out of my mind until I have to. I pretty consistently always heard very, very good things about the sales at HolMat, especially when I told people that I got into it and I wasn't sure what to expect. I heard a lot of people saying things like it was impossible to not make money at this con, and everyone does their Christmas shopping at this con, so you'll make crazy good sales no matter what you sell. Which was, encouraging, but also it may have hyped it up just a little bit too much, I think, and I'll talk about that as we get into the video. So I had this guaranteed table for 2022, and so I spent most of 22 just like with it in the back of my mind. Around the end of summer, I started going through and looking for, hotels and flights and things like that. The first time I looked, unfortunately, all the rooms in the con's hotel block were sold out. So I missed out on the con hotel block. So I went ahead and I snagged a random room not in the hotel block at a nearby hotel that was one of the ones that had a hotel block for guests, but it just meant that I didn't get the discount. And then, a few weeks later, the con opened up a block of hotel rooms at the main hotel specifically for vendors, and I didn't realize that was gonna be happening. I don't remember being told that that was a thing that would be happening, or else I would have waited, so I was bummed out about that. That may have just been my mistake. I may have seen somewhere that they were going to do that, but I don't remember that being said anywhere, so it just kind of bummed me out a little bit. I also ended up bringing my mom along to be my table helper and moral support for the convention because A, I was nervous going to a con out of state for the first time by myself, and also because she wanted to go to Disney the day after the convention. I remember when I first told her about it, I was nervous and I was thinking, Mom, should I apply for this con or not? I'm not sure if I want to go to it because it's scary and I've never been to a convention in a new city by myself. And she said, well, I'll go with you and we can go to Disney. And I was like, okay. She's helped me with cons before. She did Anime Frontier with me the year before last, and she's not like super familiar with nerdy stuff, but she doesn't mind going to them with me. And it was nice to have the moral support of just not being fully alone for like the full week that I was at this con. She was originally volunteering to go with me if I got in for 2021, but since that didn't happen, we just moved the plans back and agreed that she'd come with me for the 2022 show. So the other thing about this con that I was nervous about is that my travel expenses were pretty high. This was the most I've ever paid to get to a convention before. Between a hotel for 5 nights and 2 plane tickets to Orlando during the holiday season, it was very expensive. I'll go into the actual numbers at the end, but I was out over $2,000 just getting to this convention, which is why I was getting more and more nervous as the con approached. The good news is that the con was very good about communicating well in advance. I've had bad experiences with conventions in the past that, don't tell you when, like where your table is, where loading is, etc. They don't release a map of the convention or a schedule or anything like that until like the week of. So having correspondence over a month in advance for most things was very nice. And so, the con is approaching and everything is going well. I'm nervous, but we've got everything set aside and it's finally December and I've got like 2 weeks left before this con. I just have to get through Anime Frontier and then I can spend the next 2 weeks prepping for Holiday Matsuri, making sure it's gonna be awesome. And then, like I said at my Anime Frontier vlog, pretty much the day after Anime Frontier, I came home and got COVID and I basically had my December event schedule was packed. Anime Frontier the first weekend, I was going to have a small one-day art market in Austin the next weekend, and then Holiday Matsuri afterwards on 3 consecutive weekends. And then after that was Christmas one weekend and New Year's the next. So I basically had no breathing room the entire month of December. And then I managed to catch COVID at Anime Frontier. I was laid up for the entire second week of December with 102-degree fever. The first fever that I have had since 2006, and I am so mad that this broke my streak. I'm just like, this pissed me off so much. Anyway, I ended up having to skip the art market in Austin because while my symptoms were mostly gone by that weekend, I was still testing positive and didn't want to spread germs. Luckily, the folks in charge were really nice about it and gave me a refund for my table, but I was really bummed. I was hoping to go to that show. And then the entire week, I was knocked out with a fever. I just kept praying that I would be testing negative before my HolMat flight because otherwise I would be out over $2,000 in expenses that I couldn't get a refund, and I was not having it. But luckily, I did manage to recover just in time to leave for the con, but god damn, I had to cut it close. It was... I get so many new gray hairs. It was a nightmare. So let's talk about getting to the actual con. So I don't technically live in Austin, but I technically live about an hour north of there in a town that people who aren't from Texas don't know exists. Anyway, it just means that I had to leave super early. Our flight was at 7 a.m., which meant that in order to get to the airport on time to go through security and not having to be rushing and not being freaked out, my mom and I had to leave my house at 2 a.m. on Thursday morning to drive down to Austin just in the pitch dark. We managed to fit all of my stuff into 3 large suitcases and 1 smaller one without going over the weight limits. But it was a real game of Tetris because all of my stuff is super heavy, and so I would fill a suitcase to 50 pounds and it wouldn't even be half full. So we had to kind of spread our clothes around with my merch and my display stuff. It was interesting and difficult, but we made it work. So I've had airlines lose my luggage before, and I'm always worried about that, especially with traveling for conventions. I don't want them to lose my luggage that has all my inventory in it, because then I can't sell anything at the con and it will be just like a wasted expense. So I shilled out a little bit of extra money to get a nonstop flight to Orlando to avoid the risk of Southwest losing my luggage during a flight transfer. And then they lost my luggage anyway. When we got off the plane in Orlando, we headed straight to baggage claim and just waited for my bags to come around. We got 2 of my large suitcases and my little one, and we were waiting on the last suitcase, and we waited and waited and waited, and then new suitcases stopped coming onto the baggage pickup tram. And a little ball of panic started to well up inside me because that meant that one of 2 things had happened. A, the bag got put on the wrong plane somehow, or B, someone took my suitcase. And I realized to my horror that the bag that was missing was the one with all of my keychain inventory, which, if you've seen my display before, you know makes up about 75% of my entire inventory. Which meant that if I didn't find that suitcase, I was screwed. So I'm sitting at baggage claim watching everybody else get their bags and roll away. And I am trying so hard to avoid panicking. I am just repeating to myself, having a panic attack in this airport will not solve the problem. That is counterproductive. Don't panic. I'm sure there's an explanation and we can figure this shit out. So I was fighting back a panic attack while I'm running around and trying to figure out where the hell my bag ended up. We were waiting in line for like the little area that tells you where lost bags ended up. And then on the overhead speaker, I hear something like, "Flight from Austin. Oversized baggage claim," and I couldn't hear exactly what it said, but it sounded promising. So I headed to the oversized baggage claim and was like, "Hey, what's going on?" And apparently they said that there were a few more bags from our flight that were going to get dropped off at the oversized bin. I'm not sure exactly what happened there. My guess is like they had a few extra bags that got left on the runway for some reason and they had to send an extra cart to grab them. But I didn't care as long as I got my dang suitcase. And I saw a couple, like 2 or 3 other groups of people in a similar predicament to me. We briefly bonded over our shared misery. And about 15 minutes later, my missing suitcase was yeeted through the oversized baggage claim door, and I may have screamed a little and like almost started crying. There is no shame when you're me in an airport and you're just trying not to die of fear. Anyway, I'm just grateful that my bag wasn't sent off somewhere ridiculous because then I would have actually had a breakdown, but instead it was just a funny little prank played on me by Southwest Airlines. Haha, good joke, Southwest. I'll be billing you for my therapy sessions after this. Never do that to me again, please. Anyway, after all of my luggage was reclaimed, we took an Uber to the venue for setup. Our Uber ended up dropping us off at the main entrance of the hotel, and then we spent about 10 minutes wandering around looking for the actual con area before seeing a few people in cosplay and asking them, "Hey, where's the con?" When we arrived at the actual vendor hall, shockingly, the hotel staff were still setting up tables. There were entire rows that didn't have tables and chairs yet. And the row that my table was in, row C, didn't have tablecloths or drape or anything. I ended up starting my setup anyway, though, because I was tired and I just wanted to get setup done so I could go back to the hotel and sleep. But I did feel really bad for the people who got there early for setup and then didn't even have tables yet and had to wait around. I definitely saw a few people just like chilling and waiting. And that's a bummer. Why didn't they set that up the day before? You'd think they would. Anyway. So setup took about an hour, after which we snagged another Uber to our hotel, which was pretty close. It was about like half a mile down the road. My mom and I stayed at the Holiday Inn, which had a nice view of the actual convention hotel off in the distance. The hotel was... okay, it was fine, but it felt a bit run down and definitely needed a good like once over to like, you know, clean it up, make sure that stuff is actually working like it should. It definitely didn't feel like the resort that it was marketed as. There were a lot of amenities and even a water park, but the actual rooms were definitely showing their age. The worst part was the issue of the pool area that was... so imagine a donut. The hotel rooms are all on the outside of the donut, and then where the donut hole would be, that was the water park. And our hotel room was facing the water park, and the pool area was blasting super loud music like all day, and the rooms were not soundproofed even a little bit. And by the time we got back to our rooms at around 3 p.m., we had been awake for 12 hours and just wanted to sleep, but we couldn't because they were blasting like Kids Bop versions of like video game songs super duper loud. And it was December. There wasn't even anyone in the pool. Why were they playing music so loud? It sucked. So that was a nightmare. Anyway, Mom and I ended up ordering pizza for dinner and then realized that the pizza box was too big to fit in the mini fridge for the hotel. So that was a fun little logic puzzle we had to work around on minimal sleep. The joy of hotels, yay. Anyway, day 1, convention start. So, right off the bat, my biggest complaint about this con was the size of the tables. They were your standard 6-foot-long tables, but they were also really thin. I like to leave out flyers for my webcomic in front of my display for people to just come by and pick up, and because of how thin the tables were, my display went right to the edge and I couldn't fit anything in front of it. I had to sacrifice some of my precious drive-through window space to put stuff, which meant that my space for, talking to customers was a bit cramped. These were some of the smallest tables I have ever had for a convention, and it just really made me want to spring for one of the big pro booths next year. If I end up getting in next year at all, we'll see. So, as I stated before, everyone I talked to really gassed this con up as being one of the best money-making conventions for artists. So when Friday started and sales weren't popping off like I expected, I started to get a bit nervous. Like I said, I had spent well over $2,000 to get to this con between 2 plane tickets in the hotel and the various Ubers and food and all the other expenses. And the fact that I didn't break even on Friday made me really nervous. At every single other con I've been to so far, I've been able to break even by Friday. But this was also the con with the highest travel expenses I've ever done. So by the end of the day, when I still had several $100s left to break even, I'm not gonna lie, gang, I was feeling really nervous and kind of demoralized about the whole thing. And this is where I started having thoughts about my display and setup for conventions, because most of my inventory is double-sided keychains, so I use a setup made from those modular storage cubes and hooks that let the keychains dangle so people can flip them over. I primarily deal in charms and pins, and therefore I don't really have many prints to show. But I was sandwiched between 2 big displays that had big walls of prints, and those tables ended up being a lot more higher up, a lot more vertical, and therefore a lot more visible than me as well. I'm not saying I resent my neighbors, not at all, they're doing a good job with their displays, but it definitely highlighted that my display, by comparison to others, isn't as eye-catching as it could be. And what I noticed a lot at this con especially was that my booth was getting passed over completely. If there was a crowd around my table, which there was most of the time since the halls were so full of people, my booth got completely passed over pretty frequently since people couldn't see it. Which, is bad. I already had more plans by this point to make more prints so I could have a print wall behind my display in the future, but I spent the entire con just thinking to myself, dang it, I really need to make that print wall. As far as sales go, they were a smidge slower than I expected, but not bad by any means, just not as much as I was hoping for considering how much it cost to get to the con. On a side note, I mentioned that my mom was helping me at this convention. This wasn't her first rodeo. Like I said, she came with me to Anime Frontier last year. But as I mentioned in my Anime Frontier video, that con was really slow and she didn't have a whole lot to do. At Anime Frontier, I mostly just put her in charge of my button maker, but at this con I didn't have my button maker. I've stopped bringing my button maker to conventions at all, because it's just too much to carry and they don't make me enough money, honestly. So at this con, she really didn't have much to do. I tried showing her how to use the square reader so she could ring up customers, but what we ended up doing was having her mark down inventory for me and putting things in bags while I dug around behind the display and grabbed the merch for purchases and ran credit card transactions. Before the con, I also gave all of my merch types a code that they correspond with, so instead of rattling off what series something was from and a character name that she had to hear properly first in the loud convention center and then go around in my inventory journal and look for, I could just say 2 letters and a number. So for example, my Ace Attorney charms would be AA and then a number. The codes were next to the character and the series in my inventory journal as well as on the display, which did help a little, But I'll need to iron out the kinks a little more in the future, because my biggest issue is that I have over 100 charm designs, so keeping them all organized and easy to find is very tricky. One last thing before the discussion of Friday ends, I mentioned that we weren't staying at the actual hotel venue. We were staying at one a little ways away. Well, what made that easier to manage was that the con actually had shuttles running back and forth between the main venue and the hotels in the surrounding area. In the mornings, it was super easy to catch a bus to the con, but at night, it was so crowded and dark and chaotic that it was kind of a mess. There was definitely one night where we were led onto a bus, and then everyone in the bus was told that we were on the wrong bus and we had to get off. Then they put us onto another bus. That bus didn't have seats, and so half of us had to then get off the bus again and then sit awkwardly on the sidewalk and wait for a third bus to get us back to our hotel. It took like 30 minutes. It was a bit of a mess. Not sure how they could improve on that logistically. Maybe make the buses to certain hotels pick people up in different locations. I don't know, not my department. I just hope that they can figure that out for next year. So, Saturday. Mom and I ended up heading over super early Saturday morning because she is one of those folks that can't be happy in the morning without caffeine in her system, and she wanted to get Starbucks from the shop in the venue hotel. But when we went on Friday, the line got super long, super quickly, so we legitimately planned our entire Saturday morning around getting to the con on the very first shuttle bus so that she could get to the venue as soon as possible and go get her Starbies without having to wait in a super long line. The con floor didn't open until like 10 or 11 a.m., but we were in line for that Starbucks at 8, which was pretty much as soon as the shuttle could have gotten us there. After braving the coffee line, I got to walk around and kind of look at other artist booths for a bit, but most folks weren't really there that early, so I couldn't mingle as much as I wanted. This is one of those things that's kind of hard for me, is I'm an early person. I like to wake up early, and so I usually get to conventions super early, and I would love to be able to just walk around and mingle with other artists, but a lot of folks don't get there until right before the convention opens, and I'm just like, but I don't have time to mingle with other artists because I'm usually boothing alone and can't leave my booth or else I won't make sales. I just get sad. I've heard about some booths that like have an hour where the dealer's hall is closed in the middle of the day so that like artists and dealers can have lunch. And I've never been to a con like that, but I imagine it would be nice because you could just walk around and talk to other artists and stuff, and I just think it would be neat. I don't know, this is nothing, but going back to it. Anyway, so I went into Saturday feeling pretty nervous, like I said. I was still almost $1,000 away from breaking even and kept checking my Square report multiple times over the day to see how much money I had to make before equilibrium was reached, and I'd finally be able to, start making a profit. One thing that did help was the guy who came up to my table on Saturday morning, looked over my booth for a couple of minutes, and then said, "Give me all of your Critical Role and Bravely Default charms." And I said, "All of them?" And he said, "Yeah, all of them." For context, I have almost 30 Critical Role charms, basically all of the main characters from all 3 campaigns, and 10 Bravely Default charms for the protagonists across all 3 games. This dude was ordering almost 40 charms at once. Hundreds of dollars worth of merch in one transaction, and I was just like, dang, dude, thank you to that guy if you're watching this. I hope you're enjoying the comical amount of keychains that you have now. So with that and other Saturday morning sales, I did manage to finally break even a little after noon on Saturday, which did make me feel a lot better, but then it did feel like I was starting from zero halfway through the con. It's like, okay, equilibrium has been achieved, I have broken even, everything from here is profit. Let's gas it up and try to make some more money, right? Sales still weren't as crazy as I was hoping, but I wasn't doing badly, all things considered, just spent a lot of my downtime thinking about ways to improve the booth for future shows. For Sunday, I don't have too much to say about Sunday. It was a bit less crowded than Saturday and felt slower, but I still made more than I expected when I went back and looked at my sales reports. Mom and I spent a portion of the day just like making notes in my journal about things I needed to add to my display or bring to future shows that would help make an impact, and it was nice to have somebody to bounce ideas off of. I usually do conventions by myself, and during slow sales times, I just stare at my notes and get lost in my thoughts. So it was interesting having another person to talk to about said thoughts and kind of bounce ideas off of. She also had fun running around taking pictures of cosplays she recognized or thought were interesting and then texting them to family members. She had fun, I assume, is what she told me. So, she doesn't recognize 99% of the stuff there, but she knows what Cat Bus is. And there was like a giant Cat Bus cosplay being exhibited at the back, and so I took a picture of her with it because I thought that was very funny. She's scared of Cat Bus for the context, so I always buy her Cat Bus themed things when I go to like anime cons and stuff. She loves it. So the day ended at 5. Teardown was pretty normal. We packed everything into my suitcases, rolled it down to the shuttle bus to head back to the hotel. And then our extra day was Monday. We went to Disney the day after the con, which was fun, but also by then, Mom and I were very tired from being at the con for 3 days straight, and we just kind of zombie walked our way through the day at several points. The most notable part of the day was that we decided to ride Big Thunder Mountain as our last ride of the day at like 10 p.m., and when we were about a third of the way through the roller coaster, the ride stopped. And we heard over the loudspeaker, Big Thunder Mountain is experiencing some technical difficulties. If you're in line, we don't know when the roller coaster's gonna be back open, and the park's only open for another hour, so you probably just want to leave. They didn't actually, I'm paraphrasing, but you get the idea, it's Disney speak. And so all of us that were in the roller coaster were just kind of stuck in a dark tunnel for like 5 minutes until some cast members came to turn on the lights and rescue us. And then we got to walk through the secret backstage area under the roller coaster, which was very terrifying and felt like 1,000 OSHA violations in one. They asked us not to take pictures, but to give you an idea, it looked eerily similar to the salt mine level from Resident Evil 7, just with more pipes and narrower hallways and lower ceilings. And, no, like, zombies or anything. Just imagine it in your thoughts. It was very spooky. And then our flight home was super early on Tuesday morning, and we ended up having to pre-schedule an Uber to pick us up at like 5 a.m. to get us to the airport. Nothing really bad or terrible happened, but man, I don't like flying for cons. It is such a pain. Shout out to anyone who does out-of-state cons on a regular basis. I don't know how you have the mental fortitude to handle it. You are more powerful than I, because gosh dang, I fly for like 1, maybe 2 cons a year, and it wears me out so much. I don't know how people handle it. So, assorted highlights that I'm putting here at the end because I forgot what days they happened. Probably the biggest highlight was, for the first time, getting a cosplayer from my webcomic to come up to my table and say hi. That was very cool. I definitely almost cried. I'm still losing my mind about the fact that happened. I also had several people say that they knew me and that they came to this con mostly to come and buy stuff from my booth and say hi to me, and that was super cool. This was my first time doing a con in Florida, and it just kind of highlighted that despite the fact that traveling for cons is a pain, I would like to be able to go to more cons just out of my usual Texas area because you get to meet so many new people. And people are so nice to me at cons, and I don't know how to handle it. As far as other cosplays go, there were many, many Ace Attorney cosplayers, and I got pictures of most of them, and we fangirled about Great Ace Attorney and all that, and that was very good and fun and wholesome. I also was playing the Somnium Files on stream at the time that this con happened, and so I was able to recognize cosplayers from it, and despite the fact it's a very niche series, I saw a lot of cosplayers from it. I didn't have any merch of it at the time because I was waiting until I finished the first game, but it was still really nice getting to talk to people, and actually one of my con neighbors knew about the game and we talked about it a little bit, and we ended up doing a charm trade, so now I have this tiny little Date on my fanny pack now that I use for conventions. He guards my money. I love him. He's so small. As far as other cosplay stuff, I tried to teach my mom about some of the popular cosplays that she would be seeing at the con. I definitely told her what Chainsaw Man was, because it's like, if you ever see a dude with a chainsaw coming out of his head, that's from Chainsaw Man. So now you'll know what that is. I basically spent the entire drive from my house to the airport explaining popular anime and video games that she might see cosplays of. But we ended up just doing a game where we just tried to count how many cosplays she actually recognized. And biggest shout out to the duo cosplaying the robbers from Home Alone 2. I forgot to take a picture of them, but they were very good. Trust me, I got a big kick out of that, and so did my mom. So, closing thoughts. The con was good. It just wasn't as good as I had hoped it was. And part of that was probably me. Part of that was probably just I need to make my display more visible, more vertical, more eye-catching. And that's something that I am going to be working on over the next couple of months. I think that what may have happened was that the previous year, 2021, was probably just really, really good for a lot of people. I know I had a lot of really, really good cons in 2021 because COVID restrictions had finally started lifting. People were finally going to cons again, and so they were shelling out money because they haven't been to a con in like 2 years. And so I think that the 2021 show was probably just really good for a lot of people. People hyped it up, and then it wasn't quite as profitable this year because it was pretty much a standard year. At least that's what I gathered from listening to other people talk who had been to the years before. It's just my hypothesis, but that's kind of what I assume happened. So herein at the end, let's talk about the money side. I'm going to be rounding out my numbers a little bit to make them more even, but for the transparency of it and just kind of to give you guys an idea of what I'm dealing with here, here's the money breakdown for the convention. So, first let's talk about expenses, because as I said, getting to this con was very expensive. The hotel for 5 nights, we paid about $1,400, which was, again, a lot. Actually, I think it may have been a little bit less than that. I didn't actually open up, my receipts for this, but it was over $1,000 by a large margin. The flight between 2 tickets to Orlando in the holiday season was about $1,100. My mom volunteered to pay for her own flight, but I said, no, it's a business expense, and also I owed her money anyway, so I'm just like, just let me pay for it, it'll be fine. It was still kind of a big hit in the pants, though. We paid about $120 for Uber over the course of the weekend, because it was like $50 to $60 to and from the airport in each direction. And then we had like one little short one from the venue to our actual hotel that was only like $8. Food, we spent about, this is just an estimate, probably like 200-ish. We brought a lot of snacks, but we still ended up buying food at the venue, which was really freaking expensive. Plus things like buying delivery food and stuff outside of the con. There was a lot. And then, of course, you had to pay for the table, which was about $200. So in total, expenses ended up being just a little bit under $3,000. Let's say it was about $2,800 all told. Again, I'm kind of rounding, so this math might not be perfect, but there you go. Income, as far as sales go. Friday, I made, between cash and card, I made $1,700, which again was still not quite ready to breaking even. That was why I was so nervous going into Saturday. Saturday, I made about $2,500, which put me over the breaking even point, and after that, it was all profits. And then Sunday, I made just a little bit less than Friday. I made about $1,600. So my total income for the whole weekend, I think it's net is what you say is like income before expenses, was about $5,800. So, like a little bit under 6. And then if you subtract the expenses from that, I made just about $3,000 for the weekend. And here's the thing, $3,000 for the weekend really isn't bad. In fact, a lot of my that's better than my average for most cons. But considering how stressful the prep and getting to Florida was and everything else on top of it, it just felt a little bit lackluster compared to what I expected. For some additional context, despite how much everyone was hyping it up, this con didn't even make it into my top 3 conventions. My best con ever was MomoCon 2022, about 6 months before this con, where I made more than double my holiday Matsuri profits. I packed for this con like I was gonna do MomoCon sales again, and then I didn't do MomoCon sales again. And it was like, again, it's not bad, but when you're expecting to go into a show and make a lot of money and you only make about half what you're expecting, it's disappointing. Again, it helps that my expenses for MomoCon were a lot lower. The flights were cheaper by several $100s. I only had to pay for one plane ticket, and I stayed with friends, so I didn't have to pay for a hotel. But my sales were a lot better at Momo, even by comparison. So, as far as Holiday Matsuri in the future goes, I think I'll be applying for 2023, but if I do manage to get in, I'm gonna have to make some changes to try and make the trip more profitable. I considered maybe driving, but it's about 20 hours from Austin to Orlando, and it adds a full 2 more days of travel for the trip, which increases stress quite a bit. I might try to split a hotel with other artists or congoers to try and decrease the travel costs. I definitely want to try and get into the actual main hotel next year so we don't have to deal with the shuttles. But of course, all of this is contingent on whether or not I actually get in next year. My luck for 2023 has been pretty abysmal so far. I have IkiCon and a one-day con in February, and then everything else I've applied for so far has either rejected or waitlisted me, or I just haven't heard back on my application yet. So right now my plans for 2023 are very slim. I might be light on cons for 2023, so stay tuned for that. Anyway, that's gonna wrap it up. I hope you guys enjoyed. Like I said, at the time of recording this, IkiCon has already passed, so I will be doing one more convention vlog about that. As far as upcoming conventions, I have a link down in the description where you can see what my upcoming cons are, and if you come into a convention near me, you should totally come by, say hi, I'll talk your ear off about whatever animes I'm into at the time, and it'll all be good. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know down in the comments if you have any questions. If you haven't already, please subscribe. I'm going to be doing vlogs like this for all my future shows, and I also have other art-related content on my channel, so if you're into that, please check it out. And with that, I will see you guys next time. I hope you are staying safe this winter. At the time of recording this, I am frozen into my house for like the 4th day straight because of the winter storm. Yippee-ki-yay! I hope you guys are having a better time of it than me. But anyway, I will see you guys in the next one. Have a good rest of your day, week, month, year, etc. And I will see you guys next time. Goodbye!